Am I on? Hey guys, forgive me. I'm like in my pajamas. I'm not feeling good and I'm supposed to go to Hoyt's wedding this weekend. So the video is going to be short to finish the chapter, and I'm also going to email you some things. I sent you some things today, and I'll send you some more. Read everything you can about abnormal. There's lots and lots out there. If you have questions or comments, or you want to incite a discussion, if you'll email me while I'm driving, while I'm writing tomorrow, I'll respond. Not anything else to do in the car, or on Monday in the car. So I recorded last Thursday 2 segments, and then today's classroom I recorded. Now this is just a recording, no classroom. So we're on page of my book. I found out today we're not using this. I forgot that we don't all have the same edition, that it's different. But where I'm starting now is in sexual and gender identity disorders. Since the text was published, the perception about this has changed in our country quite a bit. So I sent you some videos from Summit Ministries that will help you process these things through a Christian worldview. One of them is, you might have remembered Phoenix and I discussing a book by a young man, an Asian young man, called Out of a Far Country, and it's about a young man's homosexual journey back from homosexuality back to his faith. So anyway, one of them is from him. So there's all kinds of sexual and gender identity disorders, and again, the topic has really expanded or limited, actually, what's considered abnormal anymore. The changes in the last DSM, the proposed change reflected that the worldview identifying oneself with the opposite gender, the disorder is not, I think I'm a guy. The disorder is the feelings that I have. How do I handle the feelings that, well, I was born as a woman, but now I think I'm a man, and how do I handle those feelings? Because it's fine that I'm now a man in my heart and in my mind, but what do I do with those feelings? So there's been a big change. Eating disorders. So an eating disorder, the ones you're most common with are eating disorders for people who are thin or want to be thin or believe they should be thin or believe they're fat, but they are really thin, like anorexia and bulimia. The text doesn't talk about, but overeating is also a disorder. There are people who use eating as a coping skill, and they cannot push their self away from a plate, and that's also very unhealthy. That's not just physically unhealthy, it's mentally unhealthy if your go-to when you're sad or whatever is always to eat. Sleep disorders, dysomnias, insomnia, and narcolepsy, we talked about all of those when we discuss consciousness, so that should not be new to you. That should be review. And then parasomnias, remember we had the night terrors, that we talked about that also. Impulse control disorders. The text mentions something called intermittent explosive disorder. It's like when you have a hard time not losing your temper. This would be like you're stopped at a stoplight and you're behind another car and they don't go when the light changes green, and you jump out and you beat them up, and you can't not do that. You feel compelled to do that. Kleptomania, you may know, is the compulsion to steal. Pyromania, the compulsion to catch things on fire. And that's very serious and it's very real. I mean, we kind of joke about it, but it happens. There are people that can't walk away from an open flame, and they cause lots of problems. It's a really interesting a really interesting movie called Firestarter, right? Is that right? Anyway, with Robert De Niro and Kurt Russell. He's a fireman, and there's a pyromaniac in that movie. Pathological gambling. It can be very addictive. Gambling can be very addictive. Pathological lying, obviously, also an impulse control disorder. Adjustment disorders. These are issues like, for example, you know that my friend lost her husband right when I started school. So it's been 8 months now. And she still cries and she still has hard days. But if she was still not able to get out of bed most days, or if she was still, going to the cemetery, throwing yourself on his grave, that would be considered an adjustment disorder. At some point, your brain and your psyche kick in and you go back to normal. You may always be sad, there may always be some grief, but you have to be able to function. I sent you an email today I believe it listed the 10 most common personality disorders. So I'm not going to repeat that. I'm just going to go through them, but I want you to read about them on the email that I sent in addition to in your text. So there's a paranoid personality disorder. You can imagine what that is. Schizoid personality and schizotypal personality. These are people who have great discomfort in personal relationships. And people with a schizotypal personality, they really misunderstand. So you call them, it's an acquaintance, and you say, hey, I know that I'm going to be in your neighborhood. I thought maybe we could get a cup of coffee. Later, you hear that they said that you were their best friend. Or there's a movie, I can't recommend this movie because it's a terrible movie, but it's called Fatal Attraction. It's about this man that has this incident with this woman, and she decides that he's in love with her, and she just, goes and runs with it, and she's psycho. Of the 11 personality disorders, the one most noteworthy is antisocial personality disorder, or a sociopath or a psychopath. And Phoenix did a really good job with her further study sharing about that. And then we also learned about it in the video today. And I sent the video so you can watch it again because it's not in the clip of the Zoom class. BPD, borderline personality disorder. These are people that have, I don't really know why it's called borderline personality disorder, but these are people that their whole entire life, all of their interpersonal relationships are always just like on the border of falling apart. Maybe that's why they call it that. Very unstable, intense relationships. They are very self-sabotaging. So they get into a friendship or a romantic relationship, and then they do everything they can to destroy it. Histrionic personality disorder. This is somebody who's always making a big deal. Everything is a big drama. There's a lot of drama and theatrics. Narcissistic personality disorder. You know what this is. This is somebody that thinks of themselves first and foremost. And, we have an image of a narcissist as somebody who always checking themselves in the mirror and very vain. And it can be that. But there's also like a type of passive narcissism. And basically, it's somebody who's just very self-protective. And narcissism grows out of an unsafe childhood normally. So I'm a little kid and nobody in my home protects me, so I just learn to take care of myself. So when I'm little, that serves me well. And then when I grow up, hey, guess what? I always think of myself first, and that's not very helpful in my other relationships. Avoidant personality disorder. This goes back to attachment. Remember, we learned about attachment, avoidant, secure, dismissive. What is the other one? My brain just went blank. So an avoidant personality disorder is somebody who never feels good enough, doesn't feel like they measure up, so they kind of always withhold, even within their committed relationships. Dependent personality disorder, he words it like this, but these are the terms you've heard: codependent or counterdependent. So someone for whom, in the extreme, I say to, let's say one of my kids is codependent, is super codependent, and I say, we're not going to do what I told you we were going to do, and they fall apart. They just like, but you said, and so like my response to them is what motivates them all the time. And then obsessive compulsive personality disorder, we've talked about a couple different times, and we talked about it today. In the text, he talks about the cost of mental health in the United States. I would challenge you to look up that number. It's significantly larger than the number in the textbook. I'm sorry, I know that this chapter has been really abbreviated, and this is probably the most interesting chapter in the book. This is not what I thought was going to happen, not how I expected it to go. So That kind of stinks. Read what I send you, watch what I send you. It's disturbing to me when I look at the YouTube channel and I see that only 3 people watch the videos and there's 10 people in the classroom. So I think, So they just think they can take the quizzes and then take it and take it and take it and I'll make 100. So if I don't see that all 10 of you have watched these lectures, I'm going to take that off your participation grade. So, because participating is actually watching the lecture. You have the freedom to watch it at your own pace and in your own time, so there's no reason for you not to. So, be mindful that's going to affect your participation grade this time. To know whether or not you did it, I can tell who watched it on YouTube. I have a number, it has a counter, and it shows me who's watching it, so just so you know. Anyway, check iGrade. Read your stuff, watch your stuff, do your stuff, take your notes, do your further study, talk to other people about their further studies, and have a good weekend. Talk to you later. Bye.